I want to speak to just a common dilemma in the life of a believer. I know I've faced this. I know other people have faced this. And that is, what do you do when you receive a word from the Lord? Maybe it's a prophetic word. Maybe it's a promise from God. Maybe it's a dream that he's put in your heart. But what do you do when you have something like that? You know, how do you act? How do you respond? And I'd like to propose that there's two different kind of ends of this spectrum of what you do. There's one end, which is, God promised this to me, and now I'm going to do everything in my power to make it happen. It's up to me to get the ball rolling on this, and I'm gonna do what it takes to take action and make it happen. That's one end. The other end of the spectrum is, God promised it to me, and it's up to him. He's going to make it happen in his own time. I don't have anything to do with it. I'm just going to sit back and relax and wait as God unfolds all of this for me. And I would propose that both of those are forms of unbelief. You've got one where it's like, I don't believe God is going to do anything. I believe that if I want it to happen, I'm going to have to do it by myself. And the other one is unbelief in that I'm not going to put any effort forward. I'm just going to sit back and relax. I'm going to be a passive observer in my own life with what God's promised me. And if he wants to do it, that's great. And I'm not going to get too invested in it. And the place that you really want to be in this is right in the middle, a place of faith. And that is saying, you've got all of my action only, God's action only. But there's a place in the middle out of obedience that says, okay, because I believe this, I'm going to take steps in that direction that are in line with what God's doing, that rely fully on his power and him. It's not going to happen without him, but I'm invested and fully involved in this process. And I think that's the way God wants it to be. Our actions meeting his action and his power, knowing we can't do it on our own, but knowing that God doesn't want to do it by himself. He wants to do things in partnership with us. So I know this can be kind of ambiguous or obscure, complex. So I feel like a picture God gave to me to illustrate this was the picture of Abraham. He received this amazing promise from God that he would be the father of a great nation, that all the nations of the world would be blessed through his family. Really just amazing promise. And you see this played out in Abraham's life. You've got him acting in unbelief. He's like, I'm old, my wife is old, and he sleeps with Hagar because he's like, I'm gonna make this happen the best way that I know how under the circumstances. So he bears a son, Ishmael, through Hagar, and that's clearly a misstep in the Bible. It's he was off the mark because he was trying to do it in his own power, and God said, no, you're gonna have a son with your wife Sarah. And so now we know that Abraham, just to wait and sit around and wait for God to make something happen, is off the table, because there's only one way for Abraham to be the father of a nation, and for it to be through his wife Sarah. And he has to sleep with his wife. And if he was just waiting for God to supernaturally get her pregnant, then that shows that he's not really believing what God's saying. He has a part to play in this whole process in bearing a son who will go on to continue, having sons throughout all generations to multiply, create the nation of Israel, and all that. So all that to say, there's a place of unbelief, of overacting and not trusting God and saying we're doing it on our own. There's a place of unbelief of just being inactive and not playing a role. But there's the sweet spot in the middle of, because I believe what God has said, it relies fully on his power and his making it happen. But I know my role to play in this word, in this promise, in this prophetic word maybe that he's given you, in this dream that he's put in your heart. Maybe it's to reach certain people. Maybe there's certain people he's put in your life that you would love to see come to know him. There's overacting, there's underacting, but then there's faith of staying in step with the Spirit, stepping out and leaning on his power and not on your own. So hopefully that encourages you. I know it helps me as I look at situations and navigate, like, okay, am I trying to do this on my own? Am I avoiding acting? Or am I taking the appropriate steps in faith because I believe God's promise and I am working with him to see it come to pass? Which, like I said, I think that's the way he set it up. He wants us to rely on his power, but he wants us to be fully part of the process, walking in obedience and walking with him.